Welcome to the podcast about investing in startups, where existing investors can learn how to get the best deal possible. And those that have never before invested in startups can learn the keys to success from the venture experts. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
This is the program all about startup investing and fundraising, where we talk to the best VC and angel experts. On today's special segment of Investor Stories, the investors address trends, sectors, and markets that they think are positioned for outsized returns in the future. This is the segment called What's Next? On today's special segment, we have Mark Peter Davis of Interplay Ventures. Mark, are there any big sector changes or trends that you see on the horizon? If so, can you talk about which may have significant impact and or are positioned for outsized growth in the coming years?
There's a lot of hype around different sectors that are playing. Obviously there's robotics, there's AI. We're kind of entering another phase of what, the world can do beyond just the internet now that we can connect everything.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of stuff in that. And people talk about these things. I generally don't think about investing this way. And this is a popular question to ask on panels that VCs do. I don't really like it. And not that it's a bad question, it's just not how I think about the world. I think there's some guy in some corporate office right now dealing with some esoteric industry, dealing with some problem in that industry that most people have not seen or thought about. And he's going to knock on my door and say, hey, we've got some obscure thing here that needs to be solved and it's a big opportunity. That's the stuff I'm looking for. And I'll never have found that because I won't have traveled the same path as that person. So, yeah, I love to invest behind tectonic shifts, but I think very often the shifts are identified by people who feel the ground moving beneath their feet, and that may or may not be the one or two or three things that the VC industry is talking most about. So I like to let the crowd identify the opportunities as much as possible, because they're seeing more things. They just have a broader set of eyes and ears than any VC can have, frankly.
On today's special segment, we have Anand Sanwal of CB Insights. Anand, what sectors and or trends do you see top-tier investors focusing on now? And are there any on the rise that may get hot in the coming years?
Yeah, I think, there's the ones that everybody knows, right? So there's Internet of Things, big data, cybersecurity, I think digital health, those are going to continue to play out. I think the areas that we think are interesting, and I think one of the folks on the team coined this term frontier tech, so we're seeing like things that are really sort of game changers, right? And I think this old sort of, we hear this comment sometimes like, oh, venture capitalists aren't investing in hard technology. And then you see some of this stuff and you're like, what are you talking about? So, there's like things on precision agriculture or drones that not necessarily the DJI consumer drones, but drones that are helping insurance companies do damage assessments and satellites and asteroid mining. So I think there's a lot on this frontier tech side, a lot happening in augmented and virtual reality. I think that stuff is still relatively early. Like I think, there's sort of the pioneers are kind of settling there, but it hasn't sort of gotten mainstream, and they're highly speculative. Asteroid mining, is that going to be a big thing? But the fact that that's happening, I think, is it's not being talked about in general sort of tech media today.
Right.
But I think in a few years we're seeing some investments there. It could be incredibly big, and it's potentially sort of beyond. People always use that to change the world. It's almost like change the universe type stuff.
You guys always do such great reports on what investors are investing in, different sectors, categories, themes, what have you. I'm always pretty interested to see the stats around Sequoia or USV or Kleiner and see sort of what sectors they're focusing on.
Yeah, and I think that's a smart strategy that a lot of folks use. Again, you have to be humble to do that, but taking a look at what the smart money is doing and thinking to yourself, hey, these folks have a lot of resources. They have a history of seeing around corners pretty well. And kind of looking at what they're investing in. I'm just logging on to CBI now. I'll just take a look at Sequoia. So I'm looking at this heat map, and you can see kind of like where they've been placing their bets. But I mean, I think it's definitely, I don't know if folks do it enough, because I think everybody thinks they have their own very special thesis that nobody else has thought of. But I mean, if I was an investor, which I'm not, I think looking at what these smart folks are doing would seem to be a pretty good place to start.
On today's special segment, we have Mike Collette of Promus Ventures. Mike, are there any big sector changes or trends that you see on the horizon? If so, can you pick a couple and talk about the impact they may have?
Well, we're very bullish on VR. I wish I'm kind of surprised we've only invested in one team so far in this area, but I really do believe, VR, and you can maybe add AR to it a little bit, which I know you've done some work in, Nick. I think it really is the next big technological wave after mobile. And, we were messing around with the latest Gear VR last night here at home. I was with my wife and her parents, and we were putting this on them. I mean, 75-year-old olds experiencing VR for the first time, and like watching her mom was just, it's priceless. And you see that and you hear those reactions. That was my reaction with it. Just, she's just laughed. She's like giddy laughing. Yeah. And that's what technology should do. It should just take your breath away. And so we're very especially excited about the enterprise side of that. Not that a bunch of engineers are going to get together and be giddy about, looking at 3D renderings of engines or something, but, maybe they will. We're excited about that area. I think we're in very early innings there. We're very excited about space. We love these legacy industries, that challenger model, because the supply chain is so hard to get moving. But those are the industries that can be changed the most. And space is going through a massive overhaul right now. And old companies are clashing with new, and, rockets are really becoming the new railroads carrying orbits, payload into orbit. Right. And so there's all these products now that you never thought, possible, that are able to do things with refresh rates that cover the entire globe with data and coverage that no one ever thought could happen. And so, it's also a really fun industry to put puns around as much as possible. So we love space. We think there's a lot of really neat stuff coming out there. And lastly, I'd just say AI. Quantum computing is going to be here, I think, sooner than later. It's going to take some time, but even without that amount of power, the AI that we've invested in with teams, whether that's in finance or sports or security or a host of other areas, that backbone powering things is staggering. And, you talk with different teams around IoT and what it really means to have a certain amount of sensors in one area trying to do things. And how do you process the sensor on the edge so that the cloud even doesn't get, backlogged? I mean, there are massive volume issues that we're having to deal with, and AI in the back end is really solving a lot of them. So we really enjoy, those companies.
That will wrap up this installment of Investor Stories. Head over to thefullratchet.net to leave a comment, sign up for the newsletter, or find resources discussed on any of the episodes. Until next time, remember to over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for listening.